Every person has a story, but not everyone has a place to tell it. I've interviewed amazing people all over the planet. I want you to meet them.
My name is Jeffrey Bell, and I'm the most interesting person you've never heard of because I do my best work behind the scenes.
Well, this is a long time coming. Jeff
Frank.
Bell, thank you for joining the most interesting person you've never heard of podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have I've talked about this guy before. Do you know who Don Hewitt is?
No.
He's kind of my hero in media. One of them.
Oh, from 60 Minutes.
Yes.
Producer of 60 Minutes.
See, you're the only guy other than me that knows, because you and I we have a lot in common with Don Hewitt. You do. You're Spokane's Don Hewitt. He produced the Nixon-Kennedy televised debate.
That's correct. Okay.
Don Hewitt, he produced the Nixon-Kennedy debate for CBS. Ends up getting 60 Minutes and he had this idea. They're like, hey, you had a big touchdown. What do you want to do, kid? Yeah. And then later he talked about, realized halfway through, they're giving me this so they can fire me when it fails. Yeah. He figured that out. He's like, well, I'm just not going to fail. So 35 years later, it's still the only show in the top 10 besides The Simpsons that's run 30 years straight in the top 10 of all television shows. So he's like my hero. And you and I we all, I think, have two things in common. We know what people like, what plays, and we're behind the scenes guys.
Yes.
Why have you always been a behind-the-scenes guy? So before that, you really are a crisis communications, PR, public affairs consultant?
Correct.
How do you describe yourself now?
You just did it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But I've always, thinking about this podcast and my role.
First of all, that's a mistake.
Yeah, it probably is. But I just
Speaking of behind-the-scenes guy.
But I was thinking about kind of what's been the sort of the theme throughout this life journey of mine.
Yeah.
And it's always been typically been behind the scenes. Starting out as a photographer in high school and of the yearbook and for my local newspaper, but you're behind the scenes.
You're behind
right?
the scenes.
Right?
Yeah.
You're looking for where's the story in the image?
Right.
How do you tell the story through images?
Well, that's the other piece of story.
Yeah. Where's the story here, and how does that story relate to the audience? How does it connect on an emotional level with an audience?
Exactly.
In a very true, authentic way.
Yes.
And that started from my back. I didn't know it. I wasn't thinking of those terms.
As you look back now.
As I look back now. And then, working in the film business, I worked as an assistant film editor.
So this is 35 millimeter film.
Yes.
Flatbeds.
It was spectacular. I mean, it was just a kind of a crazy way I got into the business. But it was another sort of behind the scenes. It wasn't on the set, wasn't with the stars, wasn't with the director.
Wasn't in front of a camera.
Wasn't in front of a camera. It was all behind the fields. With the film that we have, how do we make the best story out of this film?
Right.
And I loved it. I loved the process. I loved how learned about the moment.
Yeah.
Where's the moment here that you really want to capture?
That's right.
And make sure the audience
that you build to.
Right. Yeah.
So the other piece of that isn't just the behind the scenes and isn't just I guess when I talk about what I think we know what's going to play, that moment is what you're talking about that Don Hewitt had in spades, because he was the guy who wrote, every week on 60 Minutes, the 10-second little bumper. Right. That was, Biden or Trump.
Grab your attention. What's gonna get your attention?
Yeah. Will they still be alive by election day? Find out Sunday on 60 Minutes. Tick, tick, tick. That's what he did, because he knew whatever the pulse of the country was at that moment, and story.
Yes. Because
I hadn't thought about that, but you're really, as a crisis communications guy, which to me means getting people out, keeping organizations out of the newspaper.
In large part.
Or now the news or social media or wherever social media we'll talk about.
Right.
But I never thought about it in terms of story, but you always have.
Story. It's a story.
It is, and
Yes.
I want the movie The Bask. I'm just looking at it because the poster's right there. But one of the funnest parts of that experience for me, the making of it was amazing, and the writing of it and getting it actually produced, and it was incredible. That was the funnest part. But the next funnest part was promoting it, and it was I always stood in the state. Okay, what's the next story? Where's the next? Already knowing what the next story was when you're telling the one you're at right now, and that's what we do when we help brands tell their brand story through communication, through campaigns we build.
And so when
you're doing it too.
When I get called into a crisis situation, my first question, okay, what's the story here? What's the truth here? What do I need to know?
What's the truth?
What's the truth here? I mean, let's get right to the chase.
Yeah.
Right?
The good, the bad, the ugly.
That's right. We got to know what the truth is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, okay, now that we know this, now our job is to tell the story. And how do we tell the story is really, really important. And who we tell it to.
And when.
And when we tell it.
How much of it.
And how much. All those kinds of things go into it. But at the core of it is what's the truth? What's the story that we need to be telling here? And sometimes that story is really hard to tell. I mean, really hard to tell. But it is the truth. And also work in a world that there are no secrets. So sooner or later, the story's going to come out.
They're going to find out anyway.
Right? They're going to find out anyway. So it's important for the people I work with, says we want to be out there first with the story.
Yeah.
We need to be out there first with the story, get our version of the truth out there, and then kind of go from there.
That wasn't always the case, though. Where the theory, I just think somewhere in the Clinton screw-ups, there became a pattern, a realization of people at the PR side, just watching this at the national level or international level, whatever, that, you know what, we're just going to be transparent here. We're going to just immediately say, well, yes, this is what happened. Yeah. Then go from there. But I recall growing up that, first of all, a lot of that stuff would just be hidden, bought off, whatever. You just never knew because the gatekeepers were silenced or however it was done. But that wasn't the case for a while. People would just try to hide it and hide it and hide it and hide it, and then 60 Minutes would find it.
Well, it still happens to this day, too. You'll still see examples of that.
Not the right move.
But not the right move.
Ever.
So one of the things I've learned in this process, and it took me a while to kind of tumble into this, was when I watch, you're watching television and some company, organizations just, going sideways, and you see how they're reacting to it and how they're talking about it. It's like, why are you doing this? Because it's so counterproductive. And what I came to the conclusion is, unless you're really trained in this and really cognizant of this, what happens in a crisis situation is people respond by instinct. Mm-hmm. And your instincts are that 10,000-year biological instinct to survive. How am I going to survive this, right?
Right.
Well, I'm going to blame somebody else. I'm going to minimize the problem. I'm going to do all these excuses.
I'm going to say I didn't do it.
Or I didn't do it, or not say anything at all.
Right, which could be worse.
But that's basically those human instincts about, I'm just going to get through this. And I remember my analogy when I worked with folks is when I was a kid, I had got my driver's license and I had a minor car accident. And my first thought was, blame the other person, right?
It's what you do in crisis.
It's what I do in crisis. You blame the other person. Like, Dad, it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault. All kind of stuff. And
I have never done that, of course.
But that's that immediate reaction.
Yeah,
right?
Everybody's done it.
But in a crisis situation, it's like the worst thing to do. So
it is the worst.
What you need to do is follow your values, not your instincts. Values as a person, values as an organization. And oftentimes you walk into an office and here's our company values, right? Honesty, integrity, all that kind of stuff. Okay, well that's what you base your decisions on, are those values.
Right.
And when you do that, you're going to be just fine.
Right.
Because people know, and bad things happen, right? Intentionally and unintentionally. People go have a crisis, or companies have a crisis. It's how you respond is the key.
That's right.
And my goal is working with somebody, says, we're going to work with you to get through this crisis. At the end of the day, you're going to be better stronger, have more integrity, and be this to be a better organization.
You'll actually be more revered.
Yes.
As a brand and as an organization.
Exactly right.
Because you owned it.
You owned it. You handled it. And you did it in a way that was consistent with your values.
The one I remember about Clinton that I thought was a kind of a watershed moment with the Monica Lewinsky thing. He came out immediately and said, "I did." He was very clever about how he said did not have sexual relations with that woman, whatever that means. But then, not much longer, a week later, a few days later, came out and said, "Okay, wait a minute. I was reactive. That was not the right thing. I admit now that I was wrong," and owned it.
Yeah.
And then still owns it. And it somehow worked, even after the kind of complete other side of that, which I'd never seen anything like that at the time.
Yeah, it was painful to watch.
It was painful to watch.
Really painful to watch. And that's why just coming out at the very beginning with, hey, own it.
Yeah.
It's like what we tell our kids, right?
Yeah.
Take responsibility. All that kind of
Right.
stuff. Well, that's the same thing you do, but it's really hard,
Right.
in front of all the public in the world to say, hey, we messed up. We made a
Right.
mistake. That's really hard for anybody to do.
Well, and I remember when he sort of said, "I smoke weed," and it actually helped him.
Yeah.
Because everybody that was voting for him did too.
Right. Well, it takes it off
you
the table.
Takes it off the table.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a situation here locally with an organization that faced a really difficult situation, and I'm typically brought in by attorneys who represent a client, and they'll say, "Hey, Jeff, we got this client. The XYZ's happening," because oftentimes there's litigation or potential litigation around the issue. So I work with a lot of attorneys over the years. So that was the case here. I brought in by an attorney it was a nonprofit here in town, and a very, very tragic situation involving one of their employees. And it involved embezzlement. It involved a suicide. I mean, it was just, it was horrible.
Everything you had ever wanted to avoid.
Right? And so the whole organization was in trauma over this.
Yeah.
And there were some folks on the board who saying, "Yeah, can't we just kind of keep this quiet and not tell anybody and all this kind of stuff?" And I said,
that's the reaction.
That's the reaction, right? That's the reaction.
First instinct.
It was painful. It was, it was embarrassing. It was a whole lot of things around this. And the CEO of the company, of the organization, and the board chairs and I got together and said, "Hey, listen, here's how we have to do this. We have to tell the story."
Yeah, but when you own it, you tell the story.
That's right. So what we did was I spent a week with the board chair and the president, who were terrific, and we just kind of worked on the story. What's the story? How's this? What do we know now? What can we say now?
What's true?
What's true? And so there was a reporter at the Spokesman Review that I worked with before that I really trusted, and I said, "Okay, we're going to call this reporter up, and we're going to set up a time, and we're going to meet, and we're just going to lay out the story."
Man, that's an uneasy night for a couple of people.
Yeah, I mean,
including you.
This is why this is hard,
That's a ballsy move.
But it is.
But you knew it was the right one.
It was always the right thing to do. As hard as it is, always the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so
everyone will feel lighter.
We sat down and we had this, 2-hour interview with the reporter, laid out the entire story, and it was on the front page of the Spokesman Review, above the fold. And we were expecting to hear from radio, TV stations, and everybody else. Crickets.
No way.
Because that was the story.
And they owned it, and
there was nothing else to say.
Wow.
And it was
There's nothing else to dig for.
There's nothing else to dig for.
Nothing else to pry for. No more. But pariahs can't.
It was going to, yeah. And we laid out the story in a very factual way. Here's what happened. Here's et cetera. And it was nerve-wracking. There's no doubt about it. But that approach has never, in my experience, backfired.
The only risk is that gets leaked before you can come out with it.
Yeah.
So you got to get out with it.
Yeah, you have to get out with it pretty darn quick. Because, eventually it's going to leak. Somebody's going to say something.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But that was one of my best examples of being really proactive with story.
Huh. That's a great lesson.
Yeah, it was a really good
Well,
lesson.
cheers.
Yeah.
Here's the.
Thanks, Frank.
So now you're about to taste the Amador taste test. Okay, you've never had this.
I haven't.
All right. Okay. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
It's the Jeff Bell Amador taste test.
Sweet. That's really sweet. I like it. It's nice.
Now you're
It's smooth. Maybe sweet's not the right word to say, but it's really smooth.
Right.
Really smooth.
Yeah.
That's nice. And it just sort of that.
I don't like the burning ones.
No, this has really kind of a richness all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honey kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I already knew that, you're one of the classiest people I know, because when I'm like, hey, do you want a little whiskey? You're like, yeah, I'll have a little whiskey. Do you have a dropper? And I'm like, oh, I know where you're going. A drop of water. And we do have a little water thing back there, so I just put a couple in there. But it is so much better.
With
a little water.
I'm not a whiskey aficionado at all, but a buddy and I were up hiking out of the Methow Valley area, and we came into Winthrop.
Oh yeah,
and there was a little,
or as my kids and I say, Winthrop.
And there was a bar there.
Yeah.
And we walked in, and we were the only ones there.
Jack's.
I
think it's Jack's.
Jack. And the guy said, "You got to taste this new whiskey coming out." I said, "Okay, I'm not. That's fine." So we're tasting. He says, "Now that you've had it, let me put one drop of water in it. Now taste it."
Completely different.
Yeah.
It is. This is completely different.
It was so cool.
That is not the same without the water.
It's different. It's very different. Yeah. Anyway,
I like rocks.
That's all I know about whiskey.
Well, that's all you need to know. Of all the crises, worst one, or ones that you can talk about. Maybe that was the worst one.
Yeah, it's up there on the list. Well, before I do that, let me tell you the one that was most fun crisis.
Okay, yeah, let's go positive first.
I'll go fun first. So my partner and I were in Central Oregon in Bend doing. We did a lot of media training for clients. So we put them up on camera.
Media training, for those who don't know, is if you may have to talk to the press. You need to be trained before you do that, and some things to be aware of, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's a technique to it. There's a technique to it, especially if there's a difficult situation you're talking about.
Done a little of that.
Yeah.
Training.
So we were there in Bend, Oregon, and having this training with this brewery in Bend, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're there, at the end of the day, the CEO says, "Hey, I'm glad you're here because we have a little issue."
Oh boy.
I said, "Okay." So we had this conversation, and what it came down to, they had done a brew, like a summer brew that these folks do, right?
Yeah.
And they sent it out. So they did a summer brew that the brew masters loved. I mean, I thought this is like the greatest thing we've ever done. So they ship it out to the Costco's and to all these different places. And what was happening was customers were bringing it all back. This was like about 15 years ago or so.
Weird.
All back.
Kind of at the front end of this micro craze.
Sort of the front end of it, right?
Yeah.
Bring it all back. And the reason we were bringing it back was because there was sediment in the bottle. Because they had used a brewing method from Europe, and I love this word, flocculation. And they used double flocculation process, and it left us.
Wait. The double flocculation process. That's a band
Isn't that
title,
great? I
right?
love that word. So anyway, what it does is it left a small amount of sediment in the beer bottle, and it freaked people out because they
thought there was something wrong with it.
Yeah, they feel like little pieces of skin in the beer. Wow. So anyway, it was a conflict between the brewers who thought this was great, and the marketing team was like, "We're getting killed on this.
Yeah, we don't want this. Get that crap out of there."
So anyway, it ended up in the recall. So they had to pull all the beer out of all the stores.
And it was perfectly fine.
It was perfectly fine. Yeah.
What did you just say? Too late now.
I
can't do it.
What that was what do we do? Do we, just tough it out, or do we pull everything off? You got to pull everything out.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The beer did taste really good.
The shark had been jumped.
Yes.
As they say.
So that was the most fun one in the sense, but I've had two difficult ones. And they both involve around, tragically, a school shooting.
Oh, man.
One of them was in Marysville, where I helped the partner out on the west side with that. And then in 2017 was the shooting at Freeman.
Yeah.
And my kids went to school there.
Oh, that is close to home.
It's pretty close to home.
Very.
And we were there on day 2, or 24 hours later, we were on site. It was part of a team. And my role was to manage the communications component of it, with both, communicating with students and parents. And then, we had BBC, we had Fox.
Man, the world showed up.
The world shows up. And
that tests your experience level.
Yeah. I mean, it was, you're really working in a difficult environment. And
a personal one. You knew
very personal. And the superintendent, Randy Russell, a phenomenal human being. In a very, the most difficult spot you can be in. He and his team did an amazing job. But there's like 3 people on the team. It's a small school district, and so they're just kind of overwhelmed with the situation. And so my role was to really manage the communications, and we worked with a great team of experts. And Sherry Levery being one of them, who's a trauma expert. She's done Columbine, 9/11, all those kinds of things, and she was on site. So
that's a help.
It was huge help. But I just, it was, I never want to do another one.
Let's hope we don't get
if called upon, I will. But it's intense.
What'd you learn?
It's very intense. Lots of things. One is that you're going to have a lot of bad days.
Yeah.
Just psychologically, you're going to have a lot of bad days.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you see how people really step up to the plate.
Yeah.
A
lot of heroic.
A lot of the community came together. I mean, there was so much support in the community and from other superintendents. I mean, it was really gratifying and heartwarming to see how the community responded to such a difficult situation.
The one in Marysville and the one in Freeman, you weren't less connected to the one
in Marysville.
You probably didn't know anyone there.
No.
You knew almost a lot of people
in
Freeman.
Yeah.
Contrast those two. Or was it just as hard?
No, it wasn't. It was more, definitely more difficult in Freeman. I mean, it wasn't sort of psychologically connected to the Marysville.
That probably stayed with you a while.
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes to, and I went to counseling, and I mean, you're just right, kind of right in it, and not personally directly impacted by it, but you're certainly part of the residues there.
Yeah.
And so it's really important. Well, I just learned the importance of therapy dogs. Holy, unbelievable.
What do you mean?
Well, there are trained dogs that go into difficult situations like this, and they are just a amazing comfort.
They utilize
therapy for all those that are impacted, particularly the kids.
Wow.
I mean, they are the kids just flock to them, and dogs are like such lovable and
all the time
all the time on, and but they were really exceptional in that. So watching that was pretty amazing. And the other part was just continuing to you have to, in a situation like that, the media is always looking for a story. So they're trying to get a hold of a parent or a student or whatever, and our job was to say, we talked to the students, the staff, and parents. Says, you are not obligated to talk to anybody. Don't feel obligated.
That is a great thing.
And we're the ones that are obligated to talk, right?
You want to tell us stuff to share? We'll do it.
We'll do it, but
don't put yourself through it.
Just don't put yourself through it.
Did most of them follow that?
None of them did.
They all talked.
No, none of them talked.
None of them talked. Probably a huge gift to them.
Yeah. So it's just not.
What do you get out of that?
So my job, part of my job was to talk to the producers of NBC and CBS and say, we had a press conference every day at 4:00.
It's good.
Because you have to keep feeding the beast, so to speak, right?
Yes, you do.
You have to give them the story.
Yeah, because otherwise they will get anxious and go find those people.
That's right. And they still will do that anyway, but
less.
but less so, because you're giving them updated information. So that was really key. Was every day give them information,
Law enforcement,
everything that we could do, and eventually the kind of this, on a national level, some other story breaks out and off they go.
Yeah, right. They're just
but I would say the other thing is, both national media and in particular local media were so respective.
Really.
Very respective. In local media, because they probably had new kids or families that were connected to Freeman. So, I mean, they were really, really honored. We put boundaries up, and they really honored those boundaries.
Yeah. That's cool.
Which was really, really
and
helpful.
The producers of CBS and NBC and the news, those guys, how were they with you?
Treat them with respect. They have a job to do. Help them do their job.
Yep.
And we'll be just fine.
Right.
We'll be just
don't
fine.
go put a big old wall up
Nope.
and be difficult, because then
That's
they'll
right.
push
That's right.
back and
Yep.
they'll be the sharks they can be.
Yeah. So I mean, it was not without its challenge, and I learned an important lesson too. I mean, there's mistakes you can make, and I made one. So several weeks after the tragedy, the Spokane Chiefs wanted to do a tribute to or maybe a month later.
Hockey team?
Yeah, hockey team wanted to do a tribute. Just honor them that
Freeman
night.
Strong was
exactly right.
Was the phrase
exactly
of the day.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if you guys helped create that, but it was brilliant.
It wasn't our creation, but it kind of
stuck.
organically evolved. And it stuck.
That's good. I'm glad it wasn't somebody's creation, actually.
So they wanted to do a night to honor the Freeman community and the students and so forth. So anybody from Freeman got in for free, and then between one of the quarters, they wanted to do this kind of a tribute.
Yeah.
Right? And so they called and they said, could you send us just a picture that we could use of Sam, the student who was killed in the shooting? And this picture had been used at other publications, and I just didn't even think twice about it.
Right, it's already been out there.
So I sent it off. So, and
I can feel it right now.
I wasn't, I heard the tribute went. I wasn't there. The tribute went great. People were really appreciative of the Chiefs, and it just had a really good feel to it. So,
and they intended well.
Yeah.
By the thing, of course.
So, but the superintendent got a call the next day from Sam's mom, and she was right.
You didn't ask my permission.
That's right. She was absolutely right.
Was she just pissed?
Yeah, she was understandably so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's, one of those things about those lessons that you always try to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Right. Yeah.
How would I feel if this was being
done?
How this is being communicated?
Yes, because it's your job to represent and to tell that story.
We have a story, but I mean, at the end of the day, what do people need to hear about this that's important,
right.
that cares about this?
I think there's a million of those things that you and I both do around the behind the scenes piece of just navigating things, whether it's producing, I'm real honored to maybe a chance to help film the first day of the USL soccer event that's coming up here. And by the time this is out, it'll probably have already happened. But in a couple of weekends, there's never been a professional soccer team here. There's in the stadium built for them. And, that day is going to be pretty special,
awesome.
And so I'll be producing, and our guys here, Zach and Taylor and I, are going to be filming that whole experience, right, for them, which is really cool. But with it is a lot of behind the scene, like how do you maneuver through that? What do you film? What do we get? When can we get these guys? Am I going to get a chance to get Brian and Katie, who own the place, and put the whole thing out? And the Harnatos, how do I get them? Can I? It's a lot of stuff that no one sees. All they do is see the
right.
Like, Brian said something cool, and Katie did. And the shot was right, and we're working through, can we drone? Mm-hmm. And what are the regulations around that with the FAA and the city, and there's fans and there's people, and even though that's okay, well, the soccer teams and the liability that they have, and USL Soccer have, and the PDF, and all that stuff is nobody sees it, and they never should.
Right, that's right.
They just shouldn't see all the stuff that we gotta kind of make good, and it's not something that this is a job you absolutely get better at. today you would never send that photo.
Correct.
And the only way you learned to not do it was to have it happen.
That's right.
And the amount of times you and I both screwed up is a lot. I mean, well, me. but I don't know if it is. Because once you do it a couple times, you're like hyper aware of where the trapdoors are and the potential for, and hey, I don't think you want to do that, or can we do this?
Yeah,
I don't think I could shoot
you
this.
just have this,
you
based
just
on
get
experience,
better.
you kind of know what. And there's not. What I've found is there's not really a shelf life for the skills and the experience. Right?
It gets better. It does. It's
get
like
better.
that whiskey.
Yeah, it does. It does get better with age, and you've made all the mistakes, and realize that okay, now I'm in a similar situation. Now I know how to move forward.
And you're usually in a situation where you're like, I'm the one who needs to be here.
Yeah.
And you have, and people know it around you. I wasn't quite aware of that at times. I have a great story. I met and worked with Spike Lee one time in New Orleans, and we were filming for People to People. And
oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a cool event there. Nick, my son, went on that excursion, and it was 5 years after Katrina, and it was really a service work travel experience for kids. And I remember Nick going, all we're gonna do is work. Like, well, no, you get to meet Peyton and Eli Manning, and you get to meet Condoleezza Rice was there, and Spike Lee, and you get to go on a cruise, and you get to do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the week experience, absolute favorite part for every kid was the service work they did.
Yeah.
Was working in devastation of 5 years later.
Yeah.
Condemned homes and people who were getting fined because their lawn wasn't mowed, and so the kids went and mowed the lawns and got eaten by ants and stuff. So I'm just there to get So Spike's talking to them, and we're gonna film Spike.
Yeah.
So I show up. It's right before the kids get let in and before we're gonna film. We just got there, and I literally come from the airport and walked into this beautiful hall, Tulane University, and setting up the camera in the back, and he sees me. There's 10 people there, all working for either the school or whatever. But I don't work for that. I'm just the guy shooting the video. Yeah. And he goes, "Hey, come here." He goes, "So here's what I need. I'm thinking just me and the mic and the stool, right? Right there."
Yeah.
And today you can't say this, but back then I'm like, oh, like Cosby style. He was just him and a mic, He goes, Cosby style, exactly right.
Yeah.
I go, hey, by the way, I'm Frank, and I'm a big fan. He goes, oh yeah, thanks, man. Hey, thanks for taking care of that. I go, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, who's here?
How are we gonna do this? Yeah.
Like, I wasn't gonna tell him that, hey man, I don't work here. I'm just a camera guy. Yeah. I'm just like, what do you need, man?
Make it work.
Because he just needs that problem solved right then, and for some reason he felt that I was the guy.
Yeah.
And at that moment I went, I think I'm just the guy.
Yeah.
Like people see it, and I'm not aware they're seeing it. You got to feel that same way. When you walk into a room, they just go to you at some point, don't they?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Kind
sometimes I walk in the room because
you're ahead of the game.
They're bringing me into the room for
sure.
a particular reason.
Well, yeah, and usually.
And you typically, you have their attention right from the get-go.
Right.
But I will tell you.
There is a confidence, though.
Oh, there is. I'll tell you, I've got I've spent 10 years in the film business, and I have one of the stories that I tell it impacts me to this day. It goes back to sort of telling the truth. So I was an apprentice film editor, and the first feature film I worked on was a film called Stick, which was produced, directed, and starred Burt Reynolds.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, this is in 1980.
So he's a big star then.
He was like the top box office
Dude,
star
for like 5 years.
Yeah,
like
he was it.
One of the biggest ever.
He was it.
Yeah.
So the apprentice editor had quit. They hired me to come on, and we worked at his house. At Burt's house in Beverly Hills. He had converted his 4-car garage into an editing suite. And so
that's kind of cool.
The pool was over here, and the tennis court was down there,
yeah.
and Lonnie Anderson was over there.
Lonnie Anderson was over there.
Yeah. So I mean, it was rarefied air for a kid, 4 years out of film school.
How old were you then?
Well, I got out of film school when I was 24. 24,
Where'd you go to
23,
film
something
school?
like that. USC.
You went to USC Film School?
Yeah.
What am I doing here with you?
Well, that's a whole nother
crap.
story. So anyway, I was out of school for a few years and I worked on television. I told my boss, hey, I'll wash cars to work on a feature film. Get me on a feature.
Right.
He said, and a few months later, he said, here, don't screw it up. Right?
Yeah.
So there I am in my little, 76 or 77 Toyota Corolla, driving up Burt Reynolds' parking lot with a Bentley over here and a Rolls Royce over there.
Right.
Anyway, so I was so far out of place.
Yeah.
So I'm in this. So I'm
The
working.
pool boy. is
Yeah,
here.
I was the pool boy.
Yeah.
And so I'm there for about a couple of weeks working with the editor and the assistant editor. My job is basically, just clean film and keep things organized. And it was a little person on the telephone pole. Anyway.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks into it, the editor, Bill Gardine, who I'm still friends with, he says, we're going to screen the film today. We've been working on this since it started shooting, 3 months ago or 4 months ago. You haven't seen it. And we know it has some issues that we need to work on. We'd really like your input on this.
You're the first really outsider to see it.
Yes.
That's a cool experience. I know. Yeah.
So
Wow.
the projector room was in his house. So I'm schlepped the film up to the projection booth,
No way.
and I'm sitting there, and I had met Mr. Reynolds, previously, just hi, how are you?
Mr. Reynolds,
I'm
yeah.
the new kid on the
It ain't
block.
Bert, yeah.
I'm on the new kid on the block. So I sit down, and I have my legal pad and my little pen flashlight, and I said, I can't believe this.
Right.
I am 4 years out of film school. I'm sitting here,
And they're asking my
and
opinion.
they're asking my opinion.
It's pretty cool.
This is pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Okay. So, and he comes in, sits down, and we have a little chit chat, and the film starts. It was based on an Elmore Leonard book called
yeah, I love
Stick,
Elmore
and he's a wonderful writer.
Phenomenal writer.
Phenomenal writer. So the film starts, and Burt Reynolds plays this ex-con in South Florida, gets tied up in this drug issue deal and so forth. Anyway, that's the basic storyline. Well, the first part of the film was okay. The last, 30 minutes of the film is like a mess. I mean, it is a mess. I have no idea what's going on. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Too much cocaine on the shoot.
I'm just going.
Something.
So here I went from, this is great, asking opinions. Oh, no.
Now I have this.
How am I going to
Speaking
tell
of
Burt
the truth,
Reynolds?
the truth.
How am I going to tell Burt Reynolds his film sucks, right? So I'm just sitting there thinking, this is I got a hole to crawl into. So anyway, the lights go up, and he said, well, let's go through your notes. So I start kind of with the easy stuff. And as I'm getting into cracking into the really bad stuff, he gets called away on a phone call. I'm like, thank God.
I dodged a bullet.
I dodged a bullet. And so the editor, Bill, goes, well, let's keep going because we don't know if Bert's going to come back or not, but let's go through your notes. So I'm just getting into the heavy stuff, and he walks back in the room. And so what choice do you have?
Did he produce and direct it, or did
Produced,
he
directed,
Oh, he directed
started it.
Oh shit!
Along with Candice Bergen and Charles Dern. I mean, it was a really good
That's
cast.
a big cast.
Big cast,
and it's
right?
Eleanor. I mean, that is real content.
Yes.
Oh,
So anyway, I just, as
he shouldn't have directed.
straightforward as I could, said, this is I didn't understand what was going on here, had a little problem here, and I just matter of fact, went through it as best I could. And he was very polite about it.
Well, that's good.
But he wasn't, and he was, every once in a while, he'd say, well, we tried to do this here, we tried, try to explain it a little bit. But at the end of the day, it was what it was.
You don't
right?
explain. If you didn't get it,
it was what it was.
The story's the winner.
And I thought, oh, no. And so he marches off, and I go back to the film booth and get the film and get back down to
Get back in your Corolla.
get my Corolla. And I said, Bill, well, do I come back to work tomorrow or not? And Bill said, Jeff, you did exactly the right thing. You did exactly the right thing. I know it doesn't work. Bert knows it doesn't work. If you had said, hey, I'd love it, you would not be coming back tomorrow.
That's right. No, you would
He said,
not.
our job are to be truth tellers.
The story wins.
The story wins.
100 times.
And I thought, oh, man. But it was a great lesson.
It framed everything
The
for you,
truth
didn't it?
matters.
It did frame everything.
It did frame. And a couple weeks later, Reynolds comes back into the editing room, and he goes, Jeff, we know we're going to do some reshooting. If we reshot this, and this way, do you think that would help help explain.
Burt Reynolds is asking you,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, and I said, yeah, that would go a long way. I think that would really be helpful.
I get it then. Yeah.
So they reshot. The film never worked.
No.
But
it was better.
But it was better. But it was just one of those moments where it's sort of defining moments in my life.
Yes.
In my career, it says
imprint.
The truth matters.
Yeah.
You know, as hard as it is to say,
yeah,
it matters.
Yeah.
And the people, and I found that the people that I worked with, I went from working at Burt Reynolds on a lousy film. The next film I worked on was Out of Africa.
Oh my God, you worked on Out of Africa? What?
And then I met the folks that did work for Ivan Reitman. So Ghostbusters 2
what?
and
You worked on all
Twins.
that? Why did you leave?
All that stuff. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But I was so fortunate to work with the cream of the crop.
Oh yeah, totally lucky.
And I realized those lessons I learned with those folks is they're talented, they're hardworking, they expect the best out of you because there's 20 people lined up behind you if you screw up.
That's right.
And they know how to play on a team.
Right.
It's a team sport.
They put their egos away.
It's a team sport.
It is a team sport.
And
big time.
There are people that were so much more
sport.
talented than I was, had a lot more, and they wouldn't work because they were hard to work with.
Right. Difficult
to work with. And so I'm going to spend 9 months with somebody.
That's
I
exactly
want to spend
right.
9 months with somebody I enjoy working with.
There's so many actors who work, and you're like, how come they've lasted so long in that career, and this guy hasn't, who clearly has more talent? Well, that's why.
That's why.
Because you have to live with these people. They have to be part of your team.
That's right. You become part of your family. You are absolutely a family.
Did you just work on the editing piece, the end of it? You weren't on the sets.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would be sometimes if the film is being shot on the
studio. They didn't fly you to Africa.
Then I would no. I came on because Sidney Pollack had fired his editor in Africa.
Sidney Pollack
and hired his American crew to work on the film.
Oh my God!
So
did you meet Sidney Pollack?
Oh yeah.
What do you think of him?
Oh, he was wonderful.
He's got to be.
Talented.
I love that guy, man.
I mean, he was literally in the. I mean, his bungalow was right next to the editing suite, so he was there all the time. Yeah. So we had 9 months to cut 1 million feet.
That's
of
the thing
film.
people don't realize. It's just that how much time, especially back then, so much. I have tools now that you would kill for.
Yeah.
The Frame IO stuff that I showed you, you're like, oh, I can watch this and make a comment right now, and I can get on my phone, which is good and bad because I get it all the time. I'm like constantly. Right. But if I do this now, then the train keeps moving. Yeah. That would have been a week.
Yeah.
I mean, which is, again, good and bad.
Well, we had, Out of Africa was a once-in-a-lifetime experience because the content itself, the people who were working on it, the quality of the people. And so what happened was they had already started editing the film as they shoot. And he fired his editor, and so they shipped 1 million feet of film back to the United States, to Los Angeles. And some of it had already been cut. So we had to pull it all apart, put it back into daily form,
and start all
over again. So we hired 3 editors to come in because we had to get it out by December, and we started in June. And we had the first cut was 4 hours long.
I could do it probably because I was just the end of that. But really, we were in the, what they would call offline editing world, right? Mm-hmm. That this world that we're in now, which we edit in Adobe Premiere and we actually edit in DaVinci.
Yeah.
And what was Avid back in the day? Yeah. Avid was the first part of that, right? Changed everything. I mean, I remember editing videotape. I'm not all it was 1-inch tape, man. 2-inch and 1-inch.
Yeah.
Then 3/4 inch, and then digital beta and that kind of stuff. But the tape world was a different process. Mm-hmm. You really had to know your shit and not waste time with it, which is why it was so important back then. To the other thing that as a director I've always knew I had was I know when I got it.
Yeah,
I just know.
Yeah.
I mean that is, and I always thought everybody did, and they don't.
That's why they do 1 million takes.
No, and in fact, the great story of Marlon Brando, he would whenever we worked with a first time director, he would purposely do really crappy takes to see if the guy knew if he was good or if he could spot him.
A good take.
And if he could spot him, then he was his best friend the whole shoot. If he couldn't, he was hell.
Yeah.
And and it's because you had to make the call then, print it.
Right.
Yep. That's the one. And you didn't know, you could go through other takes, but you kind of needed to know then.
Along those lines.
And I'm blessed that I still have that.
Along those lines, so working on one of the Ivan Reitman shows.
Ghostbusters, right?
Ghostbusters 2. So Shelley Kahn was the editor and a dear friend, And he was really mentoring to me to be a film editor. I mean, that was my path, right?
Yeah. What an amazing career. Some of those guys and women.
Yes.
A lot of some of the best movies ever made were edited by women.
That's right.
Are treasures.
Yes.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
That's probably why you didn't do it.
So, Shelley was, I was cutting scenes. I mean, that's how you learn, right?
Yeah.
Here, cut this.
Try
scene,
this. See what happens.
and I'll come back and you'll see how you did.
Yeah.
So he cuts this one scene, and I'm watching it with him, and he goes, I go, why is that shot in there? I mean, this doesn't work at all. He said, well, that's the shot that Ivan wants. So I put it in. I said, why don't you just take it out? He said, because if I take it out now, it'll go back in, it'll never come out.
Right. If you put it in, then it would take. He would know.
No, that was two separate stories. One is he would, Shelley would just give me. That's how you learn, right? You learn by doing. So he would give me scenes to cut, and then he would look at Albert and put it in the show, and it would end up in the show, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing,
right?
Some of your stuff
that's how it works.
Made in the movie.
Made in the movie.
You're like, I cut that scene.
Yeah. The other part had to do with this shot that Shelley was working on. I said, yeah, pull it out. And he said, no, I'm not going to pull it out. Ivan has to pull it out. Right. Otherwise, it'll stay in. It'll stay in forever.
And I have, in fact, I can't remember what it was. Last year, we've did a lot of content. So I've made you sometimes now, even if you're doing this a long time, you make a rookie mistake because you forget.
Yeah.
And I should have left a herring in that I didn't. It was like I made it too good, and then I was like, oh shit, they got to do something,
right?
You give somebody that you've made this masterpiece, which is really what we do. It's magic, and they're little, immaculate things.
Yes,
and I know it's perfect or as good as it could be, and you never show it to the client usually in that state. Because you're asking them to review it. They're going to give you something. And then they're going to change something that makes it worse. Then it's not great.
Right.
And I most of the time I'm pretty, I learned a long time ago. At some point I was just like, look, I'm really good at what I do. I've done this a super long time. This is what I've always been my advice, what I've told clients forever. I'm really good at what I do. I've done this a long time. I'm going to tell you what I think once. And then after that, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm driving the cab, and I'll drive it off the cliff if you want me to, because you're paying me. And I got the chance to tell you what I think.
Yeah.
But if you really want me to change this, I don't know everything about you guys. I don't know everything. Yeah. I think I know how to tell. To me, I'm standing in the shoes of the audience. That's my job.
Yeah.
But whatever. And I've never had any. They all go, no.
Yeah.
You're right. And I truly mean it.
Yeah.
Like I will.
Yeah.
And there've been stuff where I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea, but okay. But if you don't tell them that, it's the biggest disservice that I can give,
exactly
because that's really what they're paying me for.
That's right.
Is to not make crap, and make sure that they look good as a brand or whatever.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you have to. You're right. You have to not make it. You can't show it to them completely done ever. And they're like, "Is it good? We'll take care of the rest."
Yeah,
we'll close.
They have to get some skin in the game a little bit ownership.
Well, and you do need their feedback, and they do know their brand and their story and their organization better than you. We don't know everything.
That's right.
But typically, that's why we do so much strategy work ahead.
Right.
And why we really dive into kind of knowing what they're after, because we ask those questions ahead of time, so that when we do film, we already know that answer. Because in the old days, really, we were just working for usually an ad agency that just said, here's a script, make it better. And I don't even know. I don't know who the audience is. I don't know who we're trying to reach. I don't know. I don't get to. I'm just making this cool.
Yeah.
And
hope it works.
Maybe it's good. It's such a better world now. At least my world is better after that. So what made you stop? I mean, that's you're on a track there.
Yeah.
You could have won an Oscar.
Well, that's a long shot. But
is it?
Yeah, it's a long shot.
I don't know.
It's hard.
Did Shelley win one?
No, he didn't.
Really?
It was the only award that out of Africa basically didn't win.
Was editing.
Because I think it's because there were 3 editors on the show, and that may have been part of it. The winner was
Meryl Streep. Jesus.
The winner was the editor that did the film Witness.
Oh, it's a great movie
which is a stunning film. I mean, great movie.
Great movie. Yeah. That was actually the first movie that Harrison Ford was an actor in.
That's
Before
right.
that, he was a
That's right.
caricature.
Yeah, he was terrific. And Kelly.
He was terrific.
Kelly. Oh, I can't remember her last name all of a sudden. She McGinnis or McGillis.
Kelly McGillis.
Yeah, she was fabulous.
Phenomenal.
Anyway, that's the one.
And the kid, the little kid.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful picture.
It's a beautiful picture.
God, I remember. I gotta write that on my list to go
1985.
back and look.
1985.
So this is 85.
Yeah. So anyway, I was.
Did Out of Africa won Best Picture? Did it?
Oh
not?
yeah. And Best Actor with Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep was incredible. That was her prime.
It was, and Robert Redford was in it.
Yep.
And Michael Kitchen. I mean, it was a great cast, a great story. So I'm chugging along and thinking to myself, well, this is going to be it. And then met my wife Christy, and we started having a family. And she grew up in Colorado, but had roots to this area. I grew up in the Northwest, and I just don't. Just quality of life.
L.A.
Yeah, for a single person and for the film, it was great.
Fun.
And Christy said, Jeff, if you really want this career, we can make it work here. We can definitely make it work here.
It's a lot of nights. You're not home.
It's a hard life.
It's a hard life.
It's a very hard life.
It's a lonely life.
And I said, so it really was kind of like a fork in the road, because Shelley said, Jeff, you're ready to edit your own film now. Yeah. And we'll go out and get one for you.
Yeah. And
it was the hardest conversation I've had probably in my professional life.
You had to say, no, I don't want to
tell Shelley I can't do this.
And
he was heartbroken.
And and he's invested a lot.
Oh yeah. The whole thing was
a lot of people did.
Yes. I know it was hard. That was
not to make you feel bad.
It was weighing on me, right?
It would be.
It was really weighing on me, and I said, but it was just like, what quality of life do we want to have?
Yeah, this is.
And
I knew, you only get one of these.
I knew the Northwest. I knew this area.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up just outside of Portland.
Okay.
Oregon.
Okay.
And so I'm an Oregonian.
Yeah.
In my bones.
You can just tell looking at you.
So we just made the decision, and this, of course, as soon as I made the decision, I got a film offer, right? So here you are, right? God's testing you.
Totally.
So, but we moved up in 1989 to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where my brother-in-law lived. And I thought, we made some trips up here to the area.
Yeah.
And I thought, Spokane's close enough. I could probably find work in Spokane, and kind of.
What year was this?
Moved up in 89, 1989. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just sort of started over again.
Which is kind of just right when I started.
So my first job was with Pinnacle Productions.
Oh my gosh, Pinnacle Production with Jerry.
Yes, and
Don Moulton.
Jerry Cook.
That's what I was thinking of. Brilliant.
Stop action stuff.
Yeah, Jerry did. I mean, they did the open for Monday Night Football.
That's right.
The old pinball machine open, which was they were the only ones doing stop action back then.
Yeah.
Kind of the best in the world.
And they were doing
phenomenal.
They were doing corporate.
They were the cool guys,
stuff.
man.
So I got to write, produce, and direct for those guys.
Oh, you worked there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was great. It was so much fun.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember when they were making that. I stopped by. I don't know why I was there, dropping something off or picking something up, or just came by. Went with somebody that was going to Pinnacle just to see it or whatever. But yeah, the whole stop action set was up and. Yeah, I remember when that was being filmed. So I was there, right? I probably met you then.
Could have, man.
Crazy.
And then they got bought by Cole's family, and moved the whole operation to Seattle.
Yes, they moved to Seattle.
And they said, Jeff, do you want to move to Seattle? And I said, I just moved out of L.A. I love it here. I love Seattle. I don't want to move there.
So
then I had to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do, right? And I always had an interest in politics and public policy. My parents were very involved in politics when I was growing up, and so just as this was happening at Pinnacle, I said, I'm gonna go and talk to the folks at Tom Foley's office, who had just been elected Speaker of the House.
Right.
And I met with Janet Kilpatrick.
Yeah, Janet was amazing.
And she didn't know me from Adam, and we had a 2-hour meeting. And I was just like, this would never happen in L.A.
Wow.
This would never happen in L.A.
It would not.
And so she put me in contact with folks in Coeur d'Alene area that were involved in politics. And a year later, my wife and I were involved, Christy and I were involved in a political campaign for a U.S. Congressman, Larry LaRocco, and he won in 1990.
Of course,
he won in 1990. And so we became his staff. So we staffed his office in Coeur d'Alene for 4 years while he was in office.
That's a cool gig.
It was the best.
What did you love about it?
Well, you met everybody in North Idaho, and you got involved in all these different issues. And Christy did focus really on the casework, which was phenomenal, because when people are so frustrated, they'll write letter to your congressman, right?
Yeah.
And it really works.
Oh, yeah.
It really works. And so there's amazing stories about the casework that came out of that office that Christy did. I was kind of the outside guy, so I got involved in the Superfund site in the Silver Valley.
Oh, wow.
But the best things that happened was we were approached by a group of people in the Silver Valley who had this idea of to boost tourism, because mining was going down and timber was going down.
Wow.
So we have the Hiawatha Trail.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an abandoned rail line, and we think it would be a great rails to trails project. Would you be interested? Could you help us out?
No way. You had a part of that?
Right from the ground floor. And so they needed appropriations to pay. You know, it was all U.S. Forest Service property and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
So it
was former railroad bed. Were the rails gone?
Yeah.
Or they needed to be removed?
They were gone. They were pulled out. They were pulled out.
But it's still,
But all the trestles, all the tunnels were there and in bad shape. And they had this vision. And he said, that is an amazing vision. So our congressman got on board and was very supportive. And so I was kind of like the staff person to help facilitate the meetings. And
open doors.
We had three parties. We had the local people that were pushing this. We had the timber industry, and we had the U.S. Forest Service. And the timber industry was a little bit reluctant to get involved, because it would, all of a sudden people were looking at their logging practices. And we said, hey, this is an opportunity. How to educate people on a working forest.
See, that's how you would look at it. That's how you looked at it.
This is an opportunity for you to tell the story.
Right. Are you sure this is a problem?
Yeah. So they figured, oh, you're right. This could work, right? And then the Forest Service, which had never done anything like this before, was like, we don't do this. We don't want to do it. So so the whole congressional delegation got involved. Senator Craig's office got involved, and together, collectively, we got the appropriations to build the trail. To build this thing. So it was a super, super experience.
See, that's the stuff that you and I get to do, where we get to envision something. In fact, we're working on one potentially right now together, that is where you can see it done. Right? You can see the day when people are riding down that trail.
Yeah.
And you just have to reverse engineer back to right now.
Yeah.
And go, we can do this.
We're going to make it happen.
This is a puzzle that get built.
Yeah.
And that's fun. And you and I have that in common too.
That's this whole story, sort of the back, working in the back behind the scenes.
Right, that's
part of this is congressional staff. You're working behind the scenes, but you have an awful lot of ability to make things happen. And I get a chuckle out of people saying, "Well, I need a meeting with the congressman about this, and this." I say, "Well, that's but." First, you need to convince the staff that this is a good idea.
Absolutely right. I'm the gatekeeper, and you ain't getting past me unless it's good.
But hats off. I love the people of Silver Valley. I mean, they were just like the most wonderful people, and they had this. They're just gritty, and they make it work. And we just had to.
Project.
We just had to help them out.
It has now become such an endearing thing.
Isn't that cool?
I mean, it's a part of every family
that's
lived here, probably.
And we walked through there when the tunnel was all the water was coming down.
Do
and
you remember riding through it the first time that you went?
Oh yeah.
That must have been cool.
It's pretty special.
So my brother, Mr. Cinematographer, he figures out how to put LED lights on his bike, and lights the whole thing up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, only you would do that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's cool. So how long were you after that? Is that when you went to Gallatin Group?
Well, then there was a period of time, because Larry was defeated in '94, and when Foley was defeated.
Oh yeah,
contract
term
with America,
limits. Newt Gingrich.
All that whole
contract
thing
with America.
Right.
That was good.
So in the meantime, we
term limits that nobody honored.
I've been very close friends with a guy named Carl Benscheit. And Carl and his wife Lisa had moved up from Los Angeles.
Carl Benscheit, I met him
just about a year after we did, and he was a former producer and director for the CBS Evening News in L.A.
Wow!
And I
met him.
He had opened up his own consulting firm doing crisis communication and media training.
Okay.
And he based it out of his house in Hayden Lake.
Carl
Benscheit, I said, Carl, I'm out of work. Have you got anything for me? He said, yeah, come on, join me. And I had no idea what he did. And he said, so I spent 3 years with Carl, and we traveled the country, and he was like the guru how to do this.
Yeah.
And he was.
I met him.
Really close.
I think I met him.
Yeah, he did a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, because I worked at North by Northwest, and I think he was a client. I think that
been.
we did some things that needed, I don't know, some kind of story told.
So I worked with Carl, and he was like, I've just had great mentors all the way through this.
Well, I think you attract that.
I don't know. Well, I need
think
help.
people do.
I need help.
No, I think people do though. I mean, you attract that.
I'd like to be.
accidents.
I always want to be in a learning environment.
Right.
Where I'm learning new things and being around people that are smarter than me. And Carl was brilliant at crisis communication. I mean, our first job that I worked with him was with the Nordstrom brothers in Seattle.
Whoa.
And then we walked into their boardroom in a crisis situation, and Carl just took charge.
And you got to watch the master.
I watched the master at work. Oh. It was phenomenal. Yeah. Just absolutely phenomenal.
And you didn't forget any of it.
It was cool. And then we did.
And once you walk into those rooms, something changes in you, doesn't it?
It does.
I remember we were negotiating a deal on a movie that never got made in New York, in Manhattan, at it was Big Pen. Yeah, we had rights to a movie that was based on a pen. Yeah. A kid that renames the name of the pen to Frindle. And we owned the rights to this movie. It's a great American kids novel, and it never got made. Yeah. And we really worked hard to try to get it made. And we had a meeting, I think at Bic or Papermate and Simon & Schuster in New York. And now walking in those places is different.
Yes.
And once you do it, it's no different, but you kind of have to go in those doors and be in those rooms to have it not be so big. I don't know if I'm saying
that. Yeah. And Carl just had this.
It's a great learning thing.
He had amazing. We had lots of talents. One of them was it's all about the details. And so he went in with all the details all lined up.
He was ready.
He was ready. Yeah. And he said, you got to walk in as a peer.
That's right.
You're not an employee.
No.
You're not a consultant in a sense. No. You are a peer when you walk in that door, and you got to walk in with the attitude that you own the stage.
That's right.
And he owned the stage when he walked in the door, and he wasn't arrogant about it, but it was just kind of like his presence, how he conveyed himself, how he conversed, how he related. Yep. It was. I just sat back and just in awe. Watching.
Well, you do that now, though. And you're probably not even aware of it.
I learned that from Carl. I mean, Carl just walked in, so he said, no matter who you're talking to, they need you.
Or you're not there.
Or you're not there.
That's exactly right.
And they're counting on your wisdom,
right,
on your confidence. And he said the other thing was, they're going to ask you a lot of questions that you're not going to know the answers to, but they expect you to have an answer. And if you don't know the answer, you just say so. You know what? Frank, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to find out.
I do that all the time.
I'm going to find out for you. You just can't BS your way.
That's a great question.
You cannot BS your way through this stuff.
No, you can't.
Because they're too sharp,
yep,
and they're expecting you to come back with the right answer. And he said the other thing you need to know is you also need time to think. You need to sit back and think about the situation before you respond. Mm-hmm. They don't want a reaction.
They want
They want a response.
They want a thoughtful answer.
They want a thoughtful answer.
Right.
So don't feel like you have to, because you're the hired gun, that you have this instant answer, because sometimes that what comes out is not right.
Right. Yeah.
So there was he had so much wisdom in him. It was just amazing.
What a gift.
He was just a really become a very dear friend. And I think that's the other thing.
Is he still around?
No, he's passed away a number of years ago.
Oh.
I miss him every day.
Yeah.
And Chris Carlson, my partner who brought me into Gallatin, was a master he's just a master at politics. And he was Cecil Andrus's press secretary.
Oh my gosh!
Both here and both when he was Secretary of Interior.
Wow!
And Chris worked here, was from Spokane area, and just I just learned.
You really got around some greats.
I did. I'll never forget. We had Todd Woodard's a good friend, and one day we had lunch at the Davenport, and Todd was brought in Speaker Foley. And Chris and I brought in Cecil Andrus, and we had lunch together.
You, Todd, Tom Foley, and Cecil Andrews walk into a bar. How was that?
It was. I just sat back and just kind of tried to be a sponge to kind of absorb these two amazing human beings,
Right.
humanitarians, politicians.
You're kind of looking at
policymakers.
history.
You were looking at history.
You really are.
And they were very. They didn't know each other. You know, they weren't like super friends. They knew each other, obviously.
Yeah.
In interactions.
They'd met.
But to watch these two and the stories they told and how they interacted, it was marvelous.
So I had
great, amazing.
3 or 4 chances to meet Tom. My dad and Tom were classmates at Gonzaga Prep.
Wow.
In 1946, the 40s.
Wow.
And they went skiing together at Mount Spokane. A lot. You know, a group of guys would go ski.
Yeah.
And my dad broke his leg skiing. Mm-hmm. Took a fall. You know, I mean, we're talking skis that are bigger than this room now, you know, back then.
Little cable bindings.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he broke his leg. And Tom had to carry him to the hospital. Get him to the car, took him to the hospital, freaked out, teenager, gets him there. And my dad, you know, they were friends their whole lives, you know, on and off. They certainly knew each other.
Yeah.
And so I get the opportunity to film his last 2 campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I were the only hired guns on the shoot. Everybody else were these guys from DC, and got to see that underbelly.
Oh, that's
and that
great.
circus. And
Yeah,
those guys had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they're acting like they do. And they're all, you know, their names are all Todd and Chad and you know what I'm talking about? Brock, you know, and they're all Ivy League dudes. And I'm just like, they're so out of touch, it's not even funny. And so we would sit there, and Tom would come over and talk with us because he would tell stories about our dad.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, tell your dad, he had the dirtiest chords of anybody in high school. And that's a compliment. And we're like, it is? It doesn't sound like one. I don't even know what that means. But back then, that was the thing, you know. And he told us all that stuff. And he would just hang out and talk with us about living here in prep and, you know, all that stuff. But a machine, when it was time to go North Korea, he would just go, here's where we are in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, just ridiculously brilliant and very nice. And I've told this before, but there's a guy named Bob Shrum. I don't know if you know who that is, but he ran
Political consultant.
Yes, he ran John Kerry's campaign into the ground, and he was a Kennedy guy, Ted Kennedy dude, and he was running this, and he was the director on the shoot.
Yeah,
and we're shooting in Spangle or somewhere, 100 degrees on a farm.
Yeah.
Tom's out there looking cool, rolling up the sleeves.
Yeah.
You know, that was when he got skinny.
with the combine in the background.
Walking through the wheat field. Same story that every politician did, and we were all like, "This is nobody. I hate this." You know, it was just, but beautiful shot. You know, whatever. And he had to deliver some lines of the script, and we back then teleprompters, still are the finickiest piece of item on a shoot that anybody who knows what I'm talking about. Especially back then when there was like no hard, I mean, it was like a RAM, you know, you stuck like the floppy disk in. And if it's hot or cold, even worse, temperamental. I'm like, oh. And I am the 23-year-old operator of the teleprompter.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Tom Foley and Bob Shrum are right here having a conversation, telling me what to write. And Shrum's like, okay, kid. I'm like, oh, shit, this thing's, you better not crash. And I'm typing away. Yeah. And I start shooting this thing. And I'm like, this is a really interesting moment. Who's in charge?
Yeah. Right.
Who's in charge?
That's right.
And
that's right.
5 seconds later, Foley goes, I'm not saying that. Write this, kid. I'm like, yes, sir, Mr. Foley. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I hope you're the one in charge. Because this yahoo didn't know shit. And he didn't. And Tom writes it, changes the whole thing. It's great. He delivers it. And we go on our way. A week later, I turn on CNN, and they used to have a show called Crossfire.
That's right.
Left and the right would argue over a thing, you know. It's like between two
Pat
birds.
Buchanan. Right.
And Bob Shrum.
Interesting.
And I'm like, that's Bob? That guy?
Wow.
No shit. He's not a director. He's just a political dude that runs, you know. And we knew the budget on the, you know, they had $1 million to spend on this campaign. They're not spending it in Spokane. I mean, where's that money going?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, welcome to the world of now it's just gotten
national politics.
Ridiculously worse a million times because there's no limits on that stuff, which was a crime. You know, campaign finance is just, it's I mean,
That's a whole,
you got to see that up
That's
front,
a whole nother
you know?
podcast.
Whole other podcast. 12 more podcasts. But to see him there, and then we did the one where he was going to lose.
94.
And I remember talking to my brother. I'm like, you, Tom, and I are the only ones who know that he's going to lose. These guys have no clue.
Yeah.
And Tom knew.
Yeah.
We could see it.
Yeah.
And he was cool. He was all right with it. You know, he saw where the people
Well, I
where the winds were blowing.
I might have met you in 92 or 94. I guess it would have been 94 then, because we had a rally in Coeur d'Alene with Tom and with Larry.
Oh, we might have been shooting it.
And it could have been shooting that. Yeah.
We could have been.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about you and you know, we have talked about, but the importance, as you say, of being nonpartisan, and I've always called being Switzerland, where I can't tell whether you're right or left, and I shouldn't be able to know. And we probably have both worked for both sides of the aisle, you know, very much. I can't say who, but
my partner, Chris Carl.
At the same time, you know, I've got clients right now that are.
Oh yeah.
And that's not my job. My job is the story.
You know what? I really cherish having people across
I gotta believe
friends
in it.
across the political spectrum.
Me too. And it's been lost.
Yeah, it has been. I worked for a Democrat congressman in Idaho. I'm a split ticket, voter. I go back and forth.
Absolutely.
And that's a sort
Me
of a
too.
dying breed, unfortunately.
It
these
is.
days. It's really
Vote for the person, especially at the local level.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah.
I've voted for plenty on both sides.
Yes.
And maybe that's because I don't know, because it is about this. I have to believe in what it is. I can't make something that's not at the core, like you said, truthful.
Yeah.
Because it just won't work.
Yeah.
Beyond whether I don't feel good at night, taking money to do that. But it's mostly, that's just the only things that work, especially today, more and more and more, thankfully, are the truthful stuff, the authentic things.
Yeah.
You can smell them a mile away if it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You just can't. And the younger the demographic, the more they know. That's advertising. You're not telling. In my mind, you're either telling a story or you're advertising to somebody.
That's a good way of putting it.
Or selling something.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I'm fortunately in a position now, and I think I kind of always have been, just been attracted to tell the story.
Yeah.
You don't sell stuff, or if you do sell it in a creative, fun way, or something that makes you move.
Yeah.
It moves somebody.
Yeah.
Because otherwise.
I mean, there was a time where we would take, I'd work with clients that, I wasn't really emotionally connected to. You just do what you need to do. You do what you need to do. But at a certain point, you get to the point where, okay, now I'm just doing things that I really care about.
And that's where you are now.
And that's where I am now. And that's really, I work at WSU College of Medicine, which is phenomenal.
You're still doing work for them?
Yeah, I was hired when I was still at Gallatin, I was hired in 2014 before there was a medical school, to be part of the team with Dr. Elson S. Floyd and Lisa Brown and others to sort of market the idea across the state, because we had to get it passed through the legislature in 2015.
And Lisa was she in the legislature?
She was chancellor.
She was chancellor at
WSU in Spokane campus.
Yeah.
And so working in that environment with Elson,
but she obviously understood the legislature because she'd run the majority leader for 10 years.
But we were up. It was Elson's vision to have a healthcare campus or a health sciences campus in Spokane. So he moved the nursing, which is already here, to the Riverport campus. He moved pharmacy from Pullman up here, which was a huge lift.
Wow.
And the third piece that was missing was a medical school. And so his vision was to have a medical school as well.
He was really the pioneer of that.
Unbelievable individual. I mean, I just, I have nothing but admiration for that.
What made him great?
A number of things. He really was passionate.
Yeah.
And caring.
That goes a long way.
Goes a long ways.
Yeah.
Passionate and caring, and had a vision, and had the acumen, the political acumen, to make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen. How to make it happen. I mean, he really laid out a roadmap, And he was brilliant in hiring, Lisa Brown to be chancellor.
Yeah, right.
Because he had brought so much, she had all that wisdom and all that knowledge and experience in legislature, among other qualities.
Right.
And he just knew how to bring together the right team or a team of people to make it happen.
And your part of that were you a consultant or were you just?
I worked as a consultant because my work at Gallatin was statewide, so I had connections in, political connections and business connections and media connections around the state. And so the job was to go out to all the hospitals. If we didn't have support from hospitals and clinics and the healthcare community to do this, then it wasn't ever going to happen.
Right.
And so we just went around the state.
Took a tour.
Everywhere we went. And we said, here's our idea. What do you think? Do you think this is...
That's a great question to ask.
Does this work or not work for you?
Or let's don't do it.
Or let's not do it. And the resounding response was, we need this.
Yeah.
And WSU, is a land-grant university, so it has extension offices in all these counties. I mean, it has a great brand across the state.
Yes, of course.
To start with.
Well, particularly in that world.
To start with.
Yeah.
But a medical school is a different deal.
Well, and
right?
the need, this is another podcast, but the need in rural communities for medicine has become.
And even in rural,
almost
and in urban underserved. I mean, both.
Urban underserved, both.
Both.
Correct.
And that's the mission of this.
But boy, does WSU fit that.
And that is the land grant mission.
Yeah.
And so Elson had this. This is our mission.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to do.
Really why we're
and
here.
UW Medicine is a amazing medical school.
Oh my
I mean, one
God.
of the best in the country,
in the
right?
world.
In the world. A state our size with our population, like Missouri or Michigan, has like 6 or 7 medical schools.
Right. Right.
Because you just can't produce enough out of one.
Right. No, you can't.
And most of it is, Seattle centric and on the west side.
Yeah, I-5 corridor.
That's where UW Medicine is and so forth.
Sure.
And so
some of the best medicine in the world
it
there.
Is, absolutely.
Probably
and
is
they have,
the best.
it's a phenomenal medical school.
Phenomenal.
But it can't supply doctors for the state.
No.
Enough.
No.
And so that was, and it was interesting, Frank, is we thought the closer we get to Seattle, the more difficult the message would be.
The push would be, oh, you're getting on our territory now over here. Yeah.
But when we talked to providers there, it was, come on in.
Wow. I believe
we
it.
need doctors.
We need doctors, period.
Period.
It's still a huge thing.
And we're not setting up our own, big medical practice, right? We rely on partners to train our students.
Right.
So anyway, it's been just
a passion.
A passion.
Yeah.
My mom taught at Washington State College in 1946.
WSC. I was going to ask you about this.
Taught English because she was teaching at St. John's in high school.
St. John's, Washington.
She came from the East Coast. She came from the East Coast, wanted to get out, came to the West Coast, came by train, spent the night at the Davenport, went down to St. John's for her first job out of college. On the Palouse. And 2 years later, she got a letter from Washington State College. All these GIs are coming back from war, and we need more English teachers.
So what years was she there?
She was there from 46 to 49 at WSC. And that's where she met my dad, who was a returning GI. He had gone to Washington State College, got enlisted.
Right.
Went in the war for a year.
Yep.
Or was a pilot in a B-24 pilot in Europe.
Is that right? Whoa.
Yeah, 30 missions.
Wow.
Number 28 was
That's your dad.
D-Day.
No way. He was there at D-Day. I've been there. Have you been there?
Yes.
I have too.
So moving, so emotional.
My memory of that place is that it is the most beautiful beach in the world that you don't want to go hang out at.
Yeah, that's right.
It's still to this day.
That's right.
Right. Normandy is
very, very
stunning.
True.
I mean, the day I was there, it was the most beautiful day, and it's so heavy still.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't not.
I mean,
it takes your breath away.
My dad was, part of that
raised
generation.
Wow.
And came back to college.
That Spielberg movie. Private Ryan must have just been like, I'm going day one to see that sucker. Your dad's probably in that footage.
He was. He
You know
was
what I
a
mean?
remarkable human being. Just a remarkable.
What
human
was
being.
great about him?
His humility.
Yeah.
And a quiet leader.
Sounds like somebody I know. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Phenomenal human being.
Yeah, my dad was too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys, that great generation.
Oh.
Yeah, that you've described my dad to a T. Same thing. And this is the other thing that you and I talked about. I believe it's possible that your mom taught my dad. He was same thing.
Wow.
Grew up here, graduated in 1946 from Gonzaga Prep. He was 17 and could enter the war. The war just in the end, but you can't go till you're 17.
Yeah.
He goes to the Marine Corps to get done in 2 years.
Yeah.
Gets done in 48, goes to WSC graduates in 52 with his architectural degree.
Lives intersected.
He's right there.
He's right there.
He's got to take English. I don't know.
Oh yeah. My mom taught
Your mom
freshman
might have-
English. That is phenomenal.
It's very possible that
Very
your mom
possible.
taught my dad
Yeah.
freshman English at WSC.
Isn't that amazing?
I should go look. I probably is in his yearbook. I got all his yearbooks. I should go look at that. Is that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys, man, that's cool. Because I don't know. At least my dad was just the most amazing guy. Just super gentle.
Yes.
And really stand up and never, I never saw him do anything not great, with I don't know.
My dad's
there was a class to those
my dad's
guys.
compassion.
Yeah. Maybe
He
that
know-
war
he's-
did something
You
to
know,
him.
well,
Had to have. He'd
he'd never been in an airplane until he was trained to be a pilot.
See, my dad always wanted to fly, and he took lessons when he was 16, right before he went. He wanted to go be a pilot in the war, and his mom never let him. My grandma was like, "You're not going to fly. You're going to kill yourself. You're going to kill yourself."
Interesting.
So he finally, I'm not paying for it. So he raises a bunch of money, goes paper route something, gets money, and goes, "I got the money."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, go kill yourself." So he goes to Feltz Field,
Yeah.
where all the runways are grass in 1940, 5, 6, and he gets his pilot lessons and flies in the Washington State College. They had a flight club,
Wow.
Piper Flight Club, and he was a pilot in that. I've got photos of him. He was
That
in
is so
He was in the
cool.
flight club at WSU.
That is
and
so
he ended
cool.
up on his own plane eventually, and he had clients all around. The irony of this is he had clients kind of all over the Northwest as an architect.
Yeah.
And he would fly to Missoula, an office there, and here. So he'd fly to Missoula, he'd fly to all these little towns and build the church or whatever.
Yeah.
And he flew to one of the places he flew a lot was Libby, Montana, where he designed about 15 different buildings over his career.
Mm-hmm.
And at 79 has a bypass, and it exposes, because his immune system dropped, that he gets mesothelioma that he had contracted from Libby.
From Libby.
From the times that he was there in the 60s and 70s building.
What a story.
So that,
Yeah.
and he ends up getting the news that he's going to die, has 6 months to live, in the 6th Avenue Medical Building that he designed, one of the coolest buildings he designed, mid-century modern, right here on 6th and whatever.
Yeah.
In that very building he designed, he gets the news he's going to die.
That's
Story.
That is a story. That is an amazing.
Yeah, and he was
story.
like, "I'm really glad that I got to be there to hear it."
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he sort of always saw the positive and all of that stuff, but and then had hospice at the hospice house here, which is so beautiful, just incredibly well designed. He was like, you walk in and he could barely talk anymore, but everything was sharp still.
Yeah,
and he's like, "I like this place, like good design."
Yeah,
He appreciated the building, So he was like, I got to have my last day.
That is
in such an elegant place that he would have been proud to design.
That's a sweet story.
Yeah, he had a great,
It's a sweet story.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
So of all the, so when did you leave Gallatin, and what? Here's my question. Why you're one of my heroes and mentors or whatever, but you've been able to make this transition, the off ramp to consulting and to, was it scary to like, I'm working for somebody for 20 years, getting a paycheck?
Well, I was.
Now I'm gonna just sort of
It's just
Maybe just easy then.
life has been just one amazing journey, and I must say that, my wife Christy has been.
Did you think nobody'd call?
Well, my wife Christy's been just a great partner in all of this.
Yeah, that's the key.
You
right?
have to have a great partner to make any of this work.
Oh, for sure.
And she's been just spectacular.
Yeah.
In raising our girls and going through all these transitions with me, and just been so supportive.
Yeah.
And it's been just a great partnership. We just celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
last
congratulations!
weekend. And it was pretty cool.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great.
It's pretty cool.
But you're busier now at 70, maybe and doing big stuff.
Well, I just I just like being engaged in things that matter.
Right.
And so
Me too.
I was still at Gallatin when WSU knocked on the door, and then I cut back my time to part-time at Gallatin, sold my interest in my partnership and so forth. And so I worked for them, Gallatin part-time, was working for WSU, and I left Gallatin in 2017 and opened up my own little shingle with my dog as my associate. And so I was working part-time for WSU. Working part-time for WSU in this consulting role, which was spectacular. I love this work.
Yeah.
And then doing other things on the side. People will call me up and say, I don't
got
have a
this
website.
problem,
I got this issue, whatever it is, right?
Well, that's right.
Let's do that.
They're not going to stop calling.
They're not going to call. So let's do that. Let's get involved in that and do that and have. So when I was in the film business, I was an independent contractor.
Right.
So you're always hustling for work. And
freelancer.
If you're in work, you're helping your buddies get work. And if you're out of work, they're helping you get work.
Where's the gig? What
So
am I
I'm
doing?
always, so that's been a part of my DNA. And I love networking. I love connecting people.
Right. And you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be anyway.
I think so.
Yeah, I do. It's like there's no accidental meetings. I've always felt like everything that's happened to me on the path I'm on, there's a reason for it, or I wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get called into projects where I'm supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And I would now. There isn't nothing I work on that I'm not like I want to
invested in.
I'm passionate about it. I love it. I'm passionate about everything. But honestly, like I can do something with that. I can make a difference with that. And I've said no. Mm-hmm. I've absolutely.
And that's a great spot. It's a great spot to be in.
Yeah, I've totally fired clients.
It's a great spot to be in.
Yeah. I've had because it's like you don't need me.
Yeah.
And I've said that to a couple people that I've worked with who are like they really kind of know the business too, and they hire me for stuff because I've made something cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't really need me. Why are you? Yeah. Are you going to let me? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because you could do this.
Yeah.
Well, because no, I can't do it quite like you have. I'm like, well, then what is it that I am good? What do you need from me?
You know what I also found?
And when I find out, then I'm like, well, then can you let me do it? It's rare, but sometimes that happens, and I'm like, well, really, because you'll do a great job.
But there's also, but the other part of it is, Frank, is that, and I find kind of the outside consultant, there's a perspective that you bring. And I would be in a situation with a client, and we walk in a room, and their communications director would be there, and other people, and we'd be having this conversation, and they'd look to us to kind of some advice and counsel, and we give it to them and so forth, and the CEO or whatever would be going, oh, that sounds, we need to do that, and we walk out of the room, and our partner in this, from the client partner in this, would go, I've been telling this guy for for the last 2 years we need to do this, and you walk in the room
and you listen to
you,
oh,
and you walk on water,
it's
right?
True.
That's very true.
It is true.
It's very true. And it's like we don't have any extra wisdom, but sometimes that outside perspective is really helpful. And you could also be a thought partner with the person inside the organization.
Oh, for sure. No, we're some of the closest people that we work with are our clients. We're parts of we're an extension of their team.
Right.
And anymore, you can't afford or it's very hard to find the level of expertise that we would have. Mm-hmm. Where they can, like they can't build what we have. They can't build in house.
Yeah,
or they would.
Yeah,
and it's just not cost effective and or smart.
Yeah,
and it takes too long. But hire us in little pieces at the times when we need them, way smarter.
Yes.
Way more cost effective, fun for you and I.
Yeah.
I mean, right? And we do different things, but at the same time, our job is still to step out and stand in the shoes of the audiences that they want to reach.
That's right.
Because they can't. They're too close to it.
Yeah, they're in the trees. They're in the trees.
You cannot tell your own story.
They're also in
it's hard.
The day-to-day
right
reaction to the current situation.
Here's the other thing.
It's hard to step back.
The other advice that I give clients that I want to see what you think about. But my experience with many brands that I've worked with over years, and we've had the chance to work with SDCU for 20 plus years. I mean, it's just unheard of, that you work with a brand for, and Gonzaga and just a lot of different brands for a long period of time. That when a campaign goes, it's really clicking and it's really good. They all end shorter than they should. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll run this campaign and it's really good. And it's got legs for 5 years, and it should just keep going. Run it into the ground, because that is the job of what we're trying to do, is to tell that story regularly so that it becomes just part of the fabric of the community, right? Our STC stuff did that. And I can't tell you how many times that the people that manage that brand in-house and have to live with it every day get so sick of it that they just say, it's time for a new. And you're like, no, it's not. My advice has always been, and I don't see if you agree with this, but the minute you are so sick of it you can't stand it anymore is just when it's starting to be effective. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little sooner, but you got to let it. If it's working, you got to stick with the horse.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I've never really sort of thought of it from that perspective, because my work is a little less long.
Yeah, you're not managing something like that.
Yeah. Have that longevity to it, but I think you're right about what you're saying. But I think the other part of it is that, when we put together a strategy for an organization, not just going into a crisis situation, but looking for a longer term communication strategy,
right?
We're always looking, okay, where's the data here?
Right.
Because they're hearing from everybody.
What's the research?
And you're hearing from your critics and your friends, and your friends tell you what you want to hear and all kind of stuff. And we should do this and this. And I said, let's step back. And all our strategies are based on data.
Listening.
Let's listen to the audiences in terms of where they are with your brand, with your organization, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just knee-jerk reactions to,
or you're trusting your gut that you're right.
The latest thing you heard, right?
Right.
Or your friend down the neighborhood. So we do a lot of polling.
Yeah.
And it's a focus group, the polling piece, because you got to build a strategy based on what's the qualitative data out there.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just kind of a shot in the dark, and you're wasting money.
Right. Well, and on the flip side of when we get the baton that gets passed after the work that you guys do, kind of we're now so given so much data.
Yes.
On how those ads perform, how that story is being viewed, who watched it, how long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable the amount on the digital side of how much we get, and on the television side, nothing's changed since Desi Lou in 1957. They're still sending out. Nielsen is still sending. Yeah. Are you kidding? I swear to God, they're still sending. Diaries for people to fill out to what they watched that week. What? Are you kidding me? But what? That's another story. But that data is it's so great to be able to have it to guide where that story's going and to either validate that we're on the right track and or not.
That's right.
And sometimes we get a little tired of, whoa, those numbers are still great. I mean, sometimes I feel like, is this right? Or are they, people, we're getting bored with that working,
Yeah.
But it has helped us and our clients stay with campaigns where they would have otherwise gone, I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
It's like, you shouldn't be, because look what we got
That's
here.
what's working.
And at the end of the day, that data is super important, but the bigger goals of, do people know who you are now and feel better about your brand? Do they feel good about you?
Yeah.
When I say really, that
the
brand,
other part of
they
it is,
like it.
The other part is, are you delivering on that brand?
Yeah.
Right?
Are you
really?
Are they living up to what we're saying?
That's right. Because that's the other part of this. Because if you're not, then
it's going to die. You can do whatever you want.
That's right.
But it's not going to last.
That's right.
Yeah. And you can build 20 years to build something. or 10 years or whatever, and it can take.
And I could.
It's a week over. It can be a year and it's gone.
What I found
if
is
you stay away, they don't go with it.
In working with nonprofits is that in general, because of the work they do and the mission they have, they build up a lot of community, what I call money in the bank.
Goodwill,
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so there could be issues that come up that demand withdrawals from that credibility, but it's still there,
a good way
right?
to look at it.
But
a savings account.
They have a savings account.
Yeah.
But if they lose that savings account, it's much harder for a nonprofit to come back to survive.
It is.
Because of, wait a minute, you're a nonprofit and you're doing this?
Right.
Right. I mean,
once
that trust is broken,
trust is different.
really, really almost impossible to rebuild.
Right. Yeah. And that those brand stories they're more difficult and harder to turn that ship around.
Yes.
And almost impossible sometimes if it goes too far.
Yeah.
So and I, really more and more, what I experience all the time is if you're not telling your story, it is already being told, and it's not the story you want.
That's
told.
right.
It is being told right now all the time about
Yeah.
you, and are you telling it or is it being told by somebody else? Because 99 out of 100 times, it's not what you wish they would know.
I'll tell you, it's one of the most controversial projects we ever worked on at Gallatin was in year 2000, 2001, when Burlington Northern Santa Fe, the big railroad, wanted to build
that my grandparents worked for.
Really? No kidding.
So Northern Pacific.
Northern Pacific, yeah.
Yeah, the
MP,
Forerunner.
The
my
Forerunner.
grandfather was a mechanic, like the lead mechanic on all the trains at the train depot in Spokane, where River Palm Park is today. The clock tower.
That's so cool.
My grandparent, he asked my grandma to marry him at the clock tower. You can't get more Spokane
than that. That is great.
Isn't that a great story?
So
I just found that out
flash
like
forward a few years,
Yeah.
and they wanted to build a fueling facility in Rathdrum, Idaho.
Okay.
And the purpose for that fueling facility was, prior to that, they would take the trains from Chicago.
Right.
They'd take them all the way to Seattle, right? Or Portland.
Yep.
They'd have to refuel in Seattle or Portland, which took forever, and all the traffic congestion.
This is freight trains, yeah?
Right, freight trains. And then before they came back on the main line.
Not efficient.
Not efficient. If they put a fueling facility in Rathdrum, it would drop that time by 8 hours.
Whoa.
It'd be 8 hours faster to turn those trains around.
Totally worth it.
So from their perspective, big time, it was worth it, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So, and they had just built a facility like that in Los Angeles, California, which has the most restrictive environmental rules
EPA standards
ever anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So think Rathdrum, Idaho.
Come on.
No issue, no problem here, right?
So Wild West out here.
So they talk to the chamber and the all economic folks.
Piece of cake compared to
in
LA.
North Idaho, this is going to be a piece of cake, and we've been here for 100 years, right? So every project has opposition. And so the folks in the area thought, you know what, we don't want this in our backyard, and they
Not in my backyard.
and they found the sort of the endangered species, right? The Spokane Rathdrum Aquifer.
Ah.
You're going to put 1 million gallons of diesel fuel
on top of the most pristine water
that feeds the
this
the
entire
fountain.
region.
400,000 people drink out of this aquifer.
That's scary. It's a scary image.
And they just got their hat handed to them
by some neighbors.
Exactly.
Going, hey, this doesn't make sense. Can you build it down the road?
Yeah.
Well, they were right. Probably.
It became the most politically charged, project in the area for a number of years because everybody hated it.
Right. Everybody hated it.
Everybody, library boards were voting against it. I mean, it was like
where were you in this? What was your?
I watched them. I went to a hearing they had at the Rathdrum High School, and they just, these BNSF executives get up there and they do their thing, and they are just like, this is not going to fly.
It's not playing.
Now,
it doesn't play in Rathdrum.
BNSF, because of their railroad, and I think it's the transportation. There's a federal agency, So they really had the authority to
There are
build it.
rules.
They had to
that
build.
they
had
have
authority to
built
build
into
this.
Yes.
Otherwise, you couldn't build anything anywhere, right?
It's one of the
And
reasons our South Freeway's taking so hard.
Interstate commerce, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, they had the ability to do this, but it could have been delayed for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And so our job was how do we get the community and the railroad to get sort of common cause here?
Find some common ground together.
How do we get some common ground here? And so
No pun intended.
And we spent 3 years on that process.
Wow.
And it was never going to be a popular idea, but we had to. So we double lined all the. And we went over and
What
above.
can we do to make sure this is super safe? Well, that's good.
Bingo.
That's good.
But it was a.
Has it been? Is it
battle.
safe?
It's well. So yes.
Good.
Yes.
As I
However,
drink this water.
However, about a year after it opened,
Oh God.
everything's double lined, everything's double piped, except a pipe coming from the platform where they washed down the platforms went to an oil water separator.
Oh.
And when they were building the last building, somebody crushed the pipe. So that
course.
water oil mixture was not going into the containing tank, it was going
Into the
down,
ground, which eventually gets to the log.
Yes, yes. So this was discovered.
Was it a lot?
I don't remember the quantity of how much it was, but it was enough to that people got concerned about it, and
Sure.
rightfully so.
Sure.
And the railroad goes, and we told the railroad, shut down operations. Shut down operations.
Stop.
And they said no. And they said, well, you're going to be stopped by a judge, and the judge stopped. And we said, you know what? You've been a great client, but no more.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
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 Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you at that point you
Our integrity's on the line.
absolutely.
our-
At that point, if you don't believe in it,
Right.
we cannot do the job.
That's right.
No, yeah. So you have said no.
Oh, yeah.
I know, and that's a big one. Wow, those are such big.
Yeah.
things
Now
to
on the
carry.
sort of the flip side of that, we were Jared Webley worked in our office.
Jared, I know Jared.
You know
Yeah,
Jared?
he's great, yeah.
And he's a phenomenal. He grew up in the
love Jared.
Palouse, and
Yeah, yes.
a first wind from Boston wanted to develop a wind project on the Palouse down Tico Oakdale area.
Oh, I know. I just drove by it this weekend. I just drove right by. I saw. Yep.
And so
I just drove from Deary, Idaho, home
then you went
through
right past it.
Palouse and Potlatch. Beautiful drive.
So Jared was the point person for us at Gallatin, and the idea and the job was to how do we bring together a wind developer from Boston with a Palouse farmer, so that they have
Yeah.
their self interests are met, right?
Yeah.
And so that was another, not as contentious process as
Right.
Burns and Northern, but
But that's a big deal.
It's a
Putting
big
a
deal.
windmill on the Palouse.
on the Palouse. It was the first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of everywhere.
It was a cool project.
That's really cool.
It was very cool.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Was it because I think they're actually beautiful.
Yeah, I don't have a problem aesthetically with it at all. I mean,
No,
we drove up from Walla Walla the other day, and they're everywhere. you
Yeah,
know?
that's kind of cool.
It's kind of
They're
cool.
Sort of these powerful.
But there are obviously people that have issues with the visuals of it and other things. But it was how do we find common cause here? How do we work together as a community? Because at the end of the day, county commissioners have to approve
Right.
this, right? And their constituents have to want it.
all politics are local.
That's right. So how do you build that support? How
Right.
do you work with build trust? It's basically building trust.
How disillusioned are you with just the political winds now and the way people are at odds with each other politically, and just I have a theory about this whole world of social media and how it's been usurped at times by whoever.
Yeah.
Fake accounts sending out dribble about a candidate. Just the hijacking of that, because what I liken it to is the sort of era of distrust.
Yeah.
Has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
McCarthy in the 50s.
Yeah.
Not uncoincidental
Yeah.
with when television came in as this new medium.
Yeah.
That nobody really knew how to control. we don't know what this is, so we'll have some rules, but, and then he kind of figured, well, I'm just going to make shit up.
Yeah.
And then nobody's going to know. And he held the world for a year, right? Or whatever. And then eventually Eduardo Romero goes, yeah, that's not working. And he called them on it because there were safety nets in the media that was trusted.
Yes.
Which was no longer the case. And so now enters this whole new world of online social media platforms all over the place, exponentially more than TV, which was 4 channels.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to control it. We're in the same spot we were then, and people can take advantage of it. And I think we're in the same boat. It's just it's a genie that's much harder to control now that it's out of the bottle. How do you feel about that? And my concern is, and I won't say who, but I know a few people that, Kathy McMorris is moving on from the seat that Tom Foley owned and ran, and she's served for 20 years, and it's her time to turn up for whatever her reasons are to move on. And there's all these people jumping in, and there's some really good people who are not, who are Republicans and good ones, who would say to me off record, I'm not a Trump fan and I can't get elected. I am as good a Republican as there is in the world.
Yeah.
And I cannot serve my country and should be able to because I won't get to. What do you think about that? How do you see this? You're much more, you've seen a lot more of it than I have.
Well, it's disheartening on a lot of different levels.
It's not the world Tom Foley and
George
Bush Sr.
Well, I was talking about the conversation with Cecil
and both sides of the aisle hanging out together, having a drink.
It's basically about politics. Is about solving problems, and putting in place good public policy and having great, robust debates over it, and coming up with compromise and being able to say, look across the aisle and say, I disagree, but I respect.
Let's figure out that common ground that you found with the railroad.
You know what? And I maybe I'm Pollyanna about this, but there's a lot of common ground that you and I have, or I have with my other friends who are on the other side, maybe think politically different than I do. We want the same things,
right?
For the most part, right? And there's a lot of common ground here.
There is.
But we're really being driven by, things on the far right or the far left.
Exactly.
And social media just really, and algorithms and all that kind of drives the clicks and the attention and the monetization of all this
and the media stuff that pops.
Yeah, it's all so counterproductive, and the lack of civility.
Nothing's getting done.
The lack of civility. It's troubling. There's no question about it. I don't know how we're going to get out of this. I really don't know. How we're going to do this. I do have, just as anecdotally in a small sample set, worked with a lot of young people over the years, both at Gallatin and other venues, and I have a lot of faith in our younger generation.
Me too.
And we've given them a really, really difficult world.
We have.
On the macro sense and on the national sense.
My kids are not facing the world that you and I face.
A very different world, and 100%. a very it has a lot of there's very difficult issues that are both sort of existential.
Yep. Right.
And from
you and I are going to be
from
fine.
the climate.
We'll make it through this.
From
the climate
and from a diverse population and the race issues and so forth. So there's some really challenges out there, and I'm always hopeful, but sometimes a little less so.
Yeah. Well, I do think that they're wired for it in a way that maybe we weren't. These guys are very thoughtful and very aware of all those things you're talking about, and not afraid to sort of take them on.
Yeah.
And sort of are there. I don't know. I find them really, really a little more serious and pretty, and they respect each other a lot from very different perspectives, backgrounds, genders.
Yeah.
They're really open to that.
Yes.
It seems less hateful of a crew.
Yeah.
That Gen Z one.
I do. I have two daughters that are in
makes
their
me-
30s, and they have, I'm learning stuff from them every day.
Yeah, and mine are in their 20s, and
Which is
this
terrific.
whole crew that
And they
works here
challenge
is-
me.
Yeah,
They challenge me.
yeah, but they're
in a good
also
way.
pretty. They're great. I mean, I think they have to.
Yes. What's the alternative?
We haven't left them a great bag here to
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
What's next for you? More of the cool same stuff you're doing.
As long as I feel the passion around what I do, and as long as I feel that people I work with are I can add value and bring something to the table and be helpful, that brings me the joy.
Yeah.
Out of this. And so as long as that's and I saw sort of the mental capabilities, the physical capabilities to carry on, then I want to be engaged. I always want to be learning new stuff.
Right, and you love this place like I do. And I would tell people, sometimes you look around hoping somebody does something and you realize it's you. Uh-oh. But you and I, there's some cool stuff we might be working on right together it matters so much.
It does.
And I love being in the spot that I'm at and that you and I are in. It's a privilege.
It is a privilege.
Be the storyteller for a community or parts of that.
It's really an honor.
There's a responsibility to it.
That's right. And I just, I've been really fortunate
taken.
like you have that the people I've worked with over the years, a lot of them are really good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Oh yeah.
And I really cherish that. That's really important to me.
Yeah.
And it's meaningful.
Yeah.
It's very meaningful.
All right, last question, most important one. We are recording this on the night Gonzaga plays San Francisco. You and I were at were we at the San Francisco game? What game did we go to this year? Was it San Francisco?
Yeah.
It was San Francisco in the Kennel,
Yes.
which was a dogfight.
Yes.
I remember you turning around and looking at me like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Yeah. It's tense. It's stressful.
What do you think about, as they sit right now, I feel like they got to win this game. Now, they don't have to if they beat St. Mary's. But if they win this game.
Yeah, it's helpful.
If they win this game, they may not have to beat St. Mary's the rest of the way.
They control their own destiny. And that's
all you can ask.
That's a good spot to be in.
I think they're playing the best they're playing.
I do too.
All year.
I do too.
And in some ways, there's pressure. But
I love this team.
I love this team too.
Because it's scrappy and it's not.
They play defense.
Doesn't have the big star
that
it had before that they could rely on. I mean, I really
feel
enjoy.
Good?
I do. I feel confident that this team is.
And speaking of vibes of a community, we go as they go.
Big time.
Isn't that weird? Like my daughter is 23 years old. She's a senior at the University of Washington.
Yeah.
She has never lived when Gonzaga was not in the tournament.
Yeah.
She doesn't even know what that is. And there's a certain kind of confidence about that. My kids are like, we're winners. I didn't have that when I was a kid. The way they kind of like, we're winners, man. We're Zags, And she's a Husky.
Yeah,
but she's still a Zag.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do too. I feel like these guys, but it does come and go with that. You always talk about it. We helped build the STCU brand for 20 years. No coincidence that it coincided with Gonzaga's run identically.
Yes.
The first ad we ran for them was the year 2000, and that's when Gonzaga got in the tournament.
That's right.
Going.
Yeah.
So they've been there as long as Mark has been there.
Yeah.
And the rise is, we've just ran them during Zag March Madness and write it down.
Ride the wave.
but I don't know if you can write it down this year, But they still have a quality of them, and I think I was telling somebody that I just had Chris Standifer on, the athletic director at Gonzaga, and Mark in some ways they've gone back a little bit to the old days. This entire team's back next year.
Theoretically.
And I know there's a transfer portal.
Yeah.
And I know people can leave.
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like these guys want to leave.
That's my sense.
And they're not ready to. He doesn't have a Suggs and a Chet Holmgren that are ready to. They're just gonna go.
Yeah.
These guys they got some more seasoning in Anton's the only senior.
Yeah.
Which is a big one.
Yeah.
But there's always a big one. Last year, 6 people left.
Yeah. That's right.
And they've had to rebuild that.
And they didn't have, and Steele Ventnor, who was going to be a big part of it.
Hunter Salas, that's
doing really well.
Scoring 29 points and beating Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, what if that guy was here?
Yeah.
So it is a different world because of that transfer portal, but there is something about old guys who hang around and like playing together, and they like playing together. So in some ways, you hate to say it's a rebuilding year, but kind of never is here. But
and this year was, you could sort of classify it that way.
I think you'd have to.
Yeah.
And I think they're, as much as they're barely on the bubble right now to even get in, if they win the rest of their games, they're probably a 4 seed.
Right. I mean, they could.
Their
seed could be pretty high if they win out. Yeah.
I mean, they're ranked 23rd and they're playing the 18th ranked team.
This may be blasphemy to say this, but I love the fact that St. Mary's is doing so well.
I do too. You need a rival.
Bing
Crosby needs a Bob Hope.
You need somebody to challenge you every year, and they have basically
Duke needs
done that.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
And without,
that's right.
These guys we're Duke, North Carolina, Gonzaga, and St. Mary's. It's as close as there is to a rivalry on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the only one.
Yeah.
And then the other part of this that's bizarre for Zag fans, it's very possible. It's possible. I wouldn't say very possible. Unlikely, but possible that Washington State and Eastern will be in the tournament and Gonzaga won't.
That's true.
How is that for Coug fans and Eag fans who are loving it?
Oh yeah. Well, the Cougs have been. I mean, they've been. That Arizona game was one of the best games I've ever watched. A long time.
Kyle Smith is
great. Kyle Smith is a very good coach.
Believable.
Very good
and
coach.
when you think about it, Kyle Smith, he coached at St. Mary's.
That's right.
Came up through there. Tommy Lloyd, Gonzaga, Arizona, Washington State. It's and next year, the Cougs are in the West Coast Conference.
I think that's cool.
I think it is too. I think it's cool to see that rivalry back.
That's cool. Yeah.
When's the last time we played Washington State? Yeah. Gonzaga hasn't played the Cougs.
In the small. So I was a Theta Chi at University of Oregon when I was there for 2 years, and Ernie Kent and Stu Jackson were Theta Chi fraternity brothers.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Wow, there's 2 legends. And Stu is now running the West Coast Conference.
That's right. Yeah.
And Oregon State and Washington State are coming in there.
Yeah.
And he pulled them in. He's a smart guy. I like Stu.
He's very savvy.
He's very savvy.
Good man. Good early. He was, he was head coach of the Knickerbockers.
Right. He coached the Knicks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then went into the NBA. Was one of the top executives of the NBA.
Yeah. Right. No. That's a coup getting that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where this whole thing goes.
I know.
Well, thanks for indulging me on the Zag Talk, and thanks for
thanks,
drinking my whiskey, being here,
cheers.
being a friend, being a hero.
It's been great,
and keep doing great work. You're just finally hitting your stride, Jeff.
I've been a late bloomer all my life, so I'm finally feeling I'm getting my groove now.
MIP Podcast was filmed at the studio of Corner Booth Media. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere podcasts can be found. We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to help our podcast grow. Be good to yourself and stay interesting.